What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into another episode of Rocket Vlogs. My name is Brayden and I'm an Honest John missile enthusiast. Now, when I was a very young Rocketeer in my early teenage years, there was a company that made a 7.5-inch Honest John kit called Smokin' Rockets, and a guy named David Chance built one and painted it hippie colors with flowers on it, call it Buttercup. I loved it. These kits are extremely hard to get a hold of though, and the problem isn't that the manufacturer's no longer around. Ken Allen from Performance Hobbies still owns Smokin' Rockets, and you can get the kit from him if he can get the components, and the major component of the Honest John is its signature bulbous nose cone, and we'll just say getting one from the supplier is a bit of an adventure. An adventure I've been on several times, an adventure unfortunately people are learning as we speak. It's so hard not to love the thing though. It's 7.5-inch diameter tube, the nose cone bulbs out to about 10 inches. It's just a huge goofy scale-ish model of a ballistic missile that's super fun, and the opportunity arose to purchase one on the Rocketry Forum for an incredible price. I couldn't pass it up. I love this thing. Here are the fins right here. It's just so big and goofy and fun. I love this thing so much I even used it as a prop in a review of the Chevy C8 Corvette that I did for my employer, Motor Biscuit. You can check that video out in the top right corner if you want. Please finish this one first though. If you're a fan of the channel, if you watched before, you might recall that I started a build video on this rocket. My goal was to build the whole thing in one video and just have it nice and concise, an entire build, which is a format I kind of want to go to some. But if you'll recall, I was debating whether I wanted to go to 75 with outboard 38mm motor mounts, or if I wanted to do a central 98, which the kit came with. I decided that since the fins wouldn't reach the motor tube, I was going to stick with the 98. And then, if you'll also recall, we discovered when we went to put the thing together that this kit actually originally was a 75mm kit, and I decided that I was going to change things up back to my original plan and go to a 75 with 4 38s. Now, I've ordered the motors, and that means we need to build the big Honest John. If you want to know what the motors are, stick around and I will tell you at the end. For now, we are going to start work on this thing, and first and foremost, I want to thank my buddy Taylor for cutting these rings out for me. As you can see, there's some wood flashing. I don't know if that's the right term. That's kind of hanging out, so we're going to start by sanding that all down. Then we're going to build our motor mount assembly, and then we will get to... Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. It's December, you know what that means, Build-cember. I'm going to try and throw out as many build videos as I can at you guys, as much rocketry content as I can put together. No, it's no secret that December ad rates are higher, so the more I can post, the more you guys can watch, the more we can continue building big, ridiculous rockets. So thank you. If you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's free. Let's build a massive Honest John. We were lucky enough for me to catch a heat wave out here in Boise, Idaho, just in time to do some rocket science. It's a nice crisp 40 degrees out here, so we got some sanding to do. Obviously, it's good practice to test fit before you glue anything together on any rocket build, but it's especially important on this one because these centering rings were custom made for me and we need to make sure everything's going to fit right. You can see I've got a pen out and I'm leaving marks on the holes that still need some adjustment, and then it's back outside to the Dremel to finish those off. Once I had a good fit on the 38s, I used one of the tubes to line the rings all up and taped them together, marked everything so it's all keyed and I know which hole lines up with which best. Then it's back out to the Dremel to make sure those holes are exactly identical. Just some nice finish sanding to make sure everything goes together nice and easy. Keen-eyed viewers might have noticed that there's 2 38mm tubes and 4 38mm holes in each centering ring. Good catch. Here's why. The fins on the Honest John have 15-inch tabs that get glued to the motor tube, and Lock Precision sells their 38mm tubing in 34-inch sections. 34 divided by 2 is 17, which is longer than 15, and we only need 15 inches to gap the centering ring where the fins will be glued, so we're just going to cut these in half and have ourselves 4 17-inch motor tubes, and everything is perfect. With everything fitting nicely, it's time for another test fit. First, of course, we're going to slide all of the tubes into the centering rings as they should be assembled, then put that whole ensemble in the airframe tube, and finally, make sure all the fins reach all the way down to that center motor tube and none of the outboard motor tubes are in the way of the fins. This is exactly how it's going to be glued together, so we have to make sure that everything fits easily and nothing hangs up. That way we don't run into any issues while we've got epoxy drying. And I want to point something out right here. You might notice that the 38mm outboard motor tubes are overhanging by about 1/8 of an inch while the 75 center tube is flush with the rear ring. I left an 1/8 inch gap on the 38s because the rear closure on a 38mm Aerotech case is not as tall as the rear closure on an Aerotech 75mm case. How big of a difference is it? About 1/8 of an inch. This way, all of the cases and closures are all lined up at the same distance from the back of the rocket and makes retaining them all with a couple sets of washers very easy. Guys, it fits. It fits. The fins are the right size. It fits. That's definitely new from the last time we tried to build this thing, so I'm happy. With the test fit out of the way, that means it's now time to start gluing things, but it's a little bit more complex to put together a motor assembly when you've got outboard motor tubes like this. Obviously, you start with your middle motor tube, but you have to make sure the centering rings are on straight so that you can still get your outboard motor tubes through them. Proper way to do this is to mark where your rings are going to go on your main motor tube and get the epoxy mixed and ready to go. Once it's on the tube, you're going to actually slide your outboard motor tubes in place to make sure you've got everything lined up, but you're not gluing them in place just yet. Once the rings are dry on the center motor tube, then it's time to glue in the outboards. And a fun trick with these Lock Precision tubes is you can actually just use a damp paper towel to rub all the shiny glassine layer off, and you don't necessarily have to peel them, which is what I'm doing right here. Afterwards, I just glue all 4 of them in place, keeping in mind that I need 1/8 of an inch hanging off the back centering ring. With the bottom 2 rings out of the way, I moved on to the easy one. That's the top one, and that's where our recovery gear is going to be attached. So I put 2 U-bolts in as is tradition and slid it on the motor tube and glued it in place. Up next is the daunting task of putting the fins on and making sure they are straight. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you probably know that I'm very obsessive about making sure the fins are on straight, so here's an awesome time lapse of me going back and forth over and over and making sure the fin is straight and doing tiny little adjustments for basically the entire duration of the 5-minute epoxy is drying. After all the fins are glued in place and given time to dry, it's time for one incredibly satisfying moment. This rocket's a little bit big for my office space. Now you get to see all the chaos, the semi-organized chaos. I need to figure out what to do with all this hardware, but now is the moment of truth. So I'm going to pull the whole motor mount assembly out of the rear end here. But first, did you hear? Oh, you haven't heard. Well, let me tell you real quick. Ugly Rocket sweaters are available right now. The link is in the description. I tried to make a few new designs for a winter release, and Teespring has been having some issues with storefronts and everything. It wouldn't let me put it in the Rocket Vlog storefront, so I just said, okay, we'll just do this one for now. We'll figure out something else later. They are kind of expensive, but you can use the discount code HOLIDAY for free shipping, and I believe you can order through December 11th and still have it in time to wear it with your family on Christmas or to an ugly sweater party, whatever you want to do. I wish I had one to show you right now, but it's still not here. I did order one, so it'll be here for the next video. Hopefully, I paid for the express shipping and everything, so we'll see how it goes. Now, it's time to pull this apart. And you can kind of see here, but I keyed it, so I can make sure I have it lined up the right fin slot. But hopefully, everything will just pop on out and I didn't accidentally glue anything in. There we go. Maybe a little bit of rogue epoxy there. Kind of a little crackly and poppy. Look at that. That is a thing of beauty right there. Now it's time to mix up some epoxy and start filleting. What are we filleting, you ask? Everything. And I'm not kidding at all with that statement. Pretty much anything, anywhere I could get a popsicle stick covered in epoxy and join 2 pieces together, got a big fillet on it inside this fin can.
epoxy is West Systems, and we're using colloidal silica 406 filler for all of it. And that's as close as I'll be letting you get to seeing that. Let me just say, I should have done the internal fillets before gluing the 38s in place, but hindsight is 2020, right? That's locked down and that's not going anywhere. There's plenty of fillets on just about any surface I could get epoxy to. Basically the same way we did the 12-inch Punisher.
Approximately 10 hours later.
I'm gonna have to yell at you because I forgot the microphone. So, as you can see, this is an Honest John. And the idea of building it really fast and doing a single video for it in quick succession was really cool, but I ran into one thing. The rail buttons. Because we have to clear this giant, beautiful, bulbous nose cone. So, what we did, we got the circumference at 29.5 inches, which means at its widest point, the nose cone is 9.4 inches in diameter. And then, I took the outside diameter of the tube, this is the upper tube. I couldn't put it all together because it doesn't fit in the garage, which makes me pretty happy. Big Honest John, but 7 5/8 outside diameter tube, so 9.4 minus 7.625 is like 1.78 divided by 2. We only have to raise the rail buttons up 0.9 inches, which seems so wrong to me. But I was just holding up a rail to it, and I mean, it looks like about an inch, so if I just put them up an inch, which is so much less than I thought I was going to have to do, I think we're well in the clear here. After building the 12-inch Punisher, I got a lot more into the idea of using thickened West Systems epoxy for structural stuff. And since this is going to have to sit overnight anyway, that's what we're going to use to glue the whole fin cane assembly in. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos and you don't know what I'm talking about when I say 16-inch Punisher, we built a 12-inch diameter, or 12-inch diameter. When if you don't know what I'm talking about, we built a 12-inch diameter Punisher, so Wildman kit. We upscaled it to 12 inches in diameter. It's about 16 feet tall, weighed about 200 pounds on the pad. If you want to see the build process and the flight of that video, there's a whole playlist for it. You can see it in the top right there, and it is flying again this spring on the same motor combo, except we're gonna light all of them this time. I didn't say hopefully, I didn't say if we're lucky. I said we're going to light all of them this time. I didn't make it nearly as thick as I would for other applications. It's about like 5-minute epoxy, which is a great thickness for this stuff because it allows the centering gears and everything to push it really nicely. So I'm hoping there's gonna be like a nice little fillet around the top ring and everything's just gonna work out fine and dandy. And then all I have to do is figure out how I'm going to clamp the tube around the rear ring and get that seated properly. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's glue this in. Here is that I'm putting it about an inch below where the ring is actually going to end up and spreading it out fairly smoothly. And then the hope is that it will push it all up and give us a nice little fillet on top of the ring, which will be most evident on the top one. So if the top one does it, we'll know it worked. All right, now for the fun part, keen-eyed viewers will see this black Sharpie mark on there. There is an accompanying one on one of these slots. That guy goes right here, and away we go.
The next day.
Now I'm just using some regular old popsicle sticks to fill the gaps left from slotting the airframe all the way down so we could get the motor assembly back out. And once that glue dries, I just cut it off with a Dremel and a cutoff wheel. And then I decided to be brave and do all 8 fillets on this thing at once.
The next day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome you back to the sanding channel. It's time to sand this thing and get it ready for some paint. I've got no more will for complicated masking after 2 huge irises and a huge V2, so this is getting a very basic olive drab paint job. Next on the docket is rail buttons, and typically for the rear rail button I just kind of eyeball it for the center, but I figured I'd show you guys a way you can actually center it out. I just wrapped a piece of tape around the back of the rocket and marked where the fins are, then laid it out flat on a table and measured it, then marked exactly half, put it back on the rocket, and then that gave me about as close to the center as you're ever going to get. Then I just measured it up ½ an inch from there to my centering ring, then added a ½ inch to be exactly half the ½ inch centering ring, and punch a hole right in the middle so we can put our threaded insert in there so we can back up these rail buttons. And this is where things went terribly wrong. You can see me using a 1010 rail to try and make a straight line for marking the upper rail button. Don't do this. It won't be straight. Okay, time to talk about the mistake I just made. I didn't drill in far enough for the nutsert to go all the way down, so as soon as it hit where I hadn't drilled, it stripped it out. So I took a Dremel and ground down what was left of it sticking out, but unfortunately, this nutsert, barrel nut, wood insert, whatever you want to call it, is crooked. So it's not standing up straight like it should. However, I just discovered that if I put the coupler in 9 inches, there's a mark on there somewhere. That's half of the coupler. There you are, right there. I still have about this much room between the bottom of the coupler and the top centering ring. So what we can do instead is just move this up so it's just on the other side of the centering ring, and we can put a nut on the back and put some Loctite on there, and that'll be sufficient. Okay, so I think my line was a little crooked. Pretty irritated, so I'm gonna take a break and let this dry and fill this in and come back. Alright, the heater's on, so you probably can't hear me very well, but yeah, I sanded away the line because it's very distracting, and then used my old yarn trick as usual, and boom. I punched this hole back out because there's so little space between the coupler and everything that I'm just going to use that for my vent hole. And I'm probably going to recess the rear bulk plate for the electronics bay as high as I can. That way I have more room for recovery, but it makes more sense almost to recess as much as I can on the top end because that little piece of tube is so short. We got 9 inches of coupler and I think 8 inches of nose cone shoulder, so there's only like 3 inches of room to pack a parachute for a 10-foot tall 7.5 inch rocket. Alright guys, it's 25 degrees and pitch black out there. Time to paint. I love this camera because it makes it look brighter on camera than it actually is outside. So somebody asked me for advice on painting in the winter because I always paint in the winter and I paint at night. My advice on painting at night would be to not do it, if I'm honest with you, but here we are. Advice for painting in the winter though. Your piece, bring it outside when you're ready to spray it. If you can bring it back inside like I can for it to dry, even better. If not, as long as you spray a nice even coat, it should be okay. I use Rust-Oleum all the time. I see a lot of people complain about it. It's the only thing I use. I hate Krylon. I always get runs and stuff with Krylon and cracking and everything. Rust-Oleum, I'm fine. Just make sure the paint is warm. Spray fast. Don't bring a cold can. Don't leave it outside. If it's really cold and you don't have a heater in the garage or something, put it in the sink with hot water. Just be careful when you get water under the label. If you're spraying down, drip water on the paint, you'll have a really bad day. Ask me how I know that. And that's pretty much it. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the 1 week build of my 7.5 inch Honest John kit. I'm not gonna let you get too close to those fillets down there. Needless to say, I definitely have some more work to do, but the rocket is largely built. You can see the seam line from it being fiberglass. I actually kind of, in this context, like the glass cloth texture, which is a little weird because usually I wouldn't be too in love with that, but I don't know, it seems very industrious and you know, function over form, which is kind of what missiles are, right? The paint is really just, I mean, it's unnecessary. The sounding rockets don't really need paint either. It's just kind of to add some flair, right? So that looks very utilitarian, like materials, just will spray a coat of paint over it, but the fillets, unacceptable. I'll probably be sanding pretty much all the paint back off of those fillets because it looks pretty bad. So I need to smooth those out. That is a job for another day. Right now, I want to thank you guys for watching. Of course, I especially want to thank my Patreon supporters whose names are scrolling in front of you right now. If you want to see behind the scenes content and the extra videos, the Patreon link is in the description. It costs as little as $1 a month, and for more than that, you can get sticker and t-shirt rewards as well.
Don't forget the ugly rocket sweater is available at the link in the description, and I believe you have until December 11th to order it and have it in time for Christmas to wear it with your family and all that stuff, and use the discount code HOLIDAY for free shipping on that item or any items at rocketvlogs.com. I hope you guys are excited for this build-cember. I have several builds that need to be built. I have one that I think we might even do a one-day build on just because it's a rocket that has decals that don't even need paint, so I think it could be pretty quick and fun. We could do that. I was considering even maybe doing it live at my house, which could be interesting, but we'll see about that. I've got a couple rockets that you guys haven't seen yet that I'll be breaking down, showing to you, and yeah, we've got some cool stuff coming, and we've got a bunch of stuff. Ooh, I forgot to tell you guys what it's going to fly on. The motors are ordered. They will be here with my Wild Man shipment from Black Saturday pre-sale. First flight of the Honest John is going to be on an M650 with 2 J570s and 2 J350s surrounding it, all of it on the ground. The J's are definitely going to come up to pressure long before a Moonburner 75mm M. However, this thing is way lighter than I thought it was going to be, and based on some preliminary calculations, it's looking like the initial thrust to weight is going to be 16-to-1 on just the J motors, so no problem getting this thing up and moving, giving that M motor time to come up to pressure. Alright, I'm done talking now. Thank you for watching Rocket Vlogs. My name is Braden, and I will see you in the next video.